Let's start again. Sorry about the interruption. And now I'm going to show you how to create a custom budget. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have this scenario where a customer wants to create custom budgets. But our first suggestion was to use the SAP standard budget model. But according to the needs of this special customer, they told us, you know what, this is not the configuration I need. SAP standard budget model is not the requirement, doesn't meet the requirements that we have in this company. Why? Because according to accounting, or according to this model, we have, or we need an account in the chart of accounts. And in this chart of accounts, you have to break it according to the reports that you're going to obtain later to analyze the expenses in this model. Well, this customer told us, you know what, I need subcategories. Imagine you need a category, or you have the account in the chart of accounts for office supplies. And in the office supplies model, well, you cannot break it in toner, you cannot break it in wet paper, you cannot break it in mouse pads, you cannot break it in printers, for example, if you want to include them in that category. So that is why you cannot use the SAP standard model for the expenses, at least for these customers. And the reality is that a lot of our customers, they have these special configurations that they want to use. And it's really difficult to achieve the scenarios that they want, especially with the reports, because basically every customer wants a specific report, and you have to create it from scratch, because maybe the report doesn't have the column that they need, the logo, the KPI, the colors, and maybe they don't have B1 print and delivery to send it automatically. So you need to create all this basic configuration from zero. And of course, with this customer, we sit down, especially with the people that wanted to define this scenario or the requirement. So we analyze, and according to the configuration and the reports and the transactions they want to create, we determined that they were going to use the chart of accounts the way they have it, like, for example, only one account for the office supplies. And then in the item master data, in some cases, they want to handle the inventory of these items. So, for example, with the I don't know, the white paper inventory, but this is not a sale item, and they only want these items to be able to set up reports to obtain information, and also to handle the inventory. Not in all cases. In some cases, this is only for expenses, and they just want to determine how much they expend, the expense was. But with this scenario, using the chart of accounts with only one account and using the item master data with this configuration, they can achieve this scenario. Now that you can see my screen, I'm going to show it to you. Okay. What we determined here in the chart of accounts is that here in expenses, I have only one account for office supplies. And I created an item group. And in this item group, here in my financial determination, here in the GL account determination, in the advanced button, I determined that for this group, for this item group that is named here, I'm going to use for all the transactions, all the inventory account, all the expense account, the same office supplies account that I have over here. So even if you create an item, add it into this group, and it's not an inventory item, but it's an expense, all the transactions created in the documents will affect this account. And if they want to manage the inventory of this item as well, imagine this is an inventory item, as I mentioned, this will affect the same office supplies and account configuration. So now that I have this, I created here in my item master data model, I started the code with a G. I create a few items. Of course, you can add more. The good thing about this is that the customer was able to break or create all the categories that they wanted and they needed. Basically, to create this, they can only duplicate and change the name, because the account is the same if it belongs to this group. So in this case, this is an inventory item, or you can disable this. It is again according to the customer needs. And here in the inventory master tab, in the inventory data tab, here I can set my inventory method by item group. So according to the configuration I already determined in the GL account determination, all the transactions that are going to involve this item, I'm gonna be based in the configuration, in the accounting configuration of this item group. So now that I have this standard SAP determination, I'm gonna create with this configuration with B1 usability package and SAP Business One. We decided to create a user-defined object. This user-defined object, of course, is based on the analysis. You have to think about the analysis that the customer is going to need later. If they want to have this this budget only by year, or maybe they need it by month, if they need it by a quarter, it's fine. Just determine it, okay, year, quarter. Maybe they need a branch, maybe they need a project, maybe they need a costing code according to the customers reports that they're going to be later. This is something that you really need to consider. You create a user-defined object, and of course you create all the fields that are involved. And something very good about this is that, okay, you create a user-defined object using standard SAP configurations, but what happens if you only create this UDO? Well, it is very plain. I mean, you cannot select something. You can repeat the year, for example. It's not easy to find the items. You have to add a lot of formatted searches. That, I mean, it's really good to use them, but in some cases, the bad thing about using these formatted searches is that the configurations, or if the user inputs the information in a different order, this formatted search is not going to be triggered, and this can cause errors. But in this case, we're not using this. We are using validations. We're going to use universal functions that are going to improve our UDO. And then after we create this configuration, after we create transactions, now we can create the dashboards to analyze this information. This is something really good that we can create now with the latest B1 usability package model. So actually here in tools, under the customization tools, I created my table, I created the fields with my object registration wizard. I added this UDO as a default form. I can open it from here, but of course this is not really very user friendly, especially because the users normally handle everything in the main menu. So what I did is that I added this using the add and edit menus, which is really good. This is the latest add and edit menus. If you haven't seen it before, then you need to upgrade your B1 usability package version. So I drag this new menu. As you can see it here, actually you can just move it now. Well, here, like this in the middle, and now you can just drag it. You don't need to put it under and remember the menu UID, nothing. You can also here, it is the same logic. You can also select the users that are going to be able to see this special budget model that I created. And I created a universal function type macro that is only using one command. If you're familiar with macros, you will understand this command. This command is activate. Basically, it opens the window, the SAP module that you need. And in this case, it is a UDO. So that is why this is the name of my UDO. With the add, it's gonna open it this universal function. So, for example, I'm gonna update here. So under financials, my model will be, it's taken a little longer. So under financials, here is my special model. So I don't have to open it here from tool, especially because some customers have even more tables, and it's hard to open here, especially if you're in a hurry. So it's better to have it in the main menu. So this is my UDO now that you can see it. Basically, I have header, fields and also line fields. These are two tables combined. Document style when I register my UDO. So the first two fields are the document numbers. It is very important to add the document number in a UDO so you can search for the document number directly. So for example, I want the document of the budget number 3. As you can see, you can search for it, and it is not possible if you only leave the doc entry option when you create a UDO. I already have budgets created. For example, this one for the year 2017. My columns are only the line, the item name, the amount, and the month, because in this case I break it by month. This is a possibility. Maybe it's only by year, so you don't need this column. Maybe you need the branch, so you can add it, I don't know, in line level, or if you need it by header because you want to create a document for each year and for each branch. Is that okay? That's why I told you, okay, you need to analyze the information or create the object according to the reports that you're going to execute later. In this case, this was enough. This was for an example, and for the customer, of course, we create something a little bit more advanced. And with buttons to open dashboards, to analyze the information, to open reports. In this case, this is only a basic one for the webinar purposes. So I have here the lines, the amounts, the month. This is a plain object, but I improve it. If I want to create this budget, as you can see, this field is blue. If I leave it, this field is blue. It's because the B1 usability package modules work with your user-defined objects, and this is very nice because without using I don't know, transaction notifications or even, I don't know, programming and creating or using different validations advanced that involves programming, involves coding. No, here I'm just doing a right click to make this field mandatory. As you can see, it takes the user-defined object automatically. I select the color of the background and change it. Now it's going to be green. So I can use my B1 usability package tools here in this model. I also added a validation here in the item. I select the option add B1 validation configuration when this column is double click. I'm going to open mine because it's already created. And this validation, it's basically this one in this object. When this item and this column receives a double click, I'm executing a universal function type SQL report. It is a very simple query, as you can see, where I select the item code, the item name from the item master data table, where the item group code is 107. I already, of course, prepared this scenario. That's why I know that this office supplies group is this one. Of course, you can have different expenses groups, so you can modify your query, but this is a very basic one for the configurations. And I'm using this configuration select data target. What it does is that using the dynamic syntax, you can copy information into the main grid. So what I did is that instead of using a formatted search, I can open this list. I added the shortcuts of the golden arrow, so I can open and verify that this is the correct item that I should select for this budget. I'm gonna select here, for example, toner. I can select the amount, $2,000, for example, and maybe this is just for January, right? I'm sorry about the Spanish, but I created this configuration for a Spanish-speaking customer. And I'm gonna add a year, and I actually added a validation. So if I try to add this budget, remember that I opened a budget already created for the year 2017, is because also the B1 validation system, not only for executing reports, but also to create validation so we don't repeat information, so we can enter valid values like the year, like the items. We can also add line validation, so we can make sure that the user is not typing something manually and maybe adding something that it's not included or doesn't belong to this group or a valid group, or the code, we can validate that the code exists, so we don't have errors in our reports. So also this validation I added on the with the add event when I try to create, but you can also create this validation when you leave the field. So you don't have to wait until the customer or the user enter all the items. You can also create this validation when this item is validated. So when I input information and I try to leave the field, then you will get this error message. So you can prevent the user for working twice. That if the budget for this year is already created, then I can get a message on time and search for it using the UDO. So I'm gonna select the year 2018, but first let me show you the validation that I created for this. It is basically, I selected that option when this item is validated. Here for this, well, this is when I have it, when I press the add button, but this is basically a query that it verifies that this number, if this number already exists in the tables, and I'm using a simple universal function type message. Okay. So now that I have my budgets, I can create documents. A nice thing about this is that here in purchasing, I already have documents created. Here in purchasing, I can select, for example, this is my toner. I have it here for Acme Associates. I can select the items. I can select the price. If I want to handle inventory, I can change the quantity, of course. And I can only, the only thing that I need is that I need to select the items here when I receive my expenses invoices. Now, the last feature I want to show you is that you can use this information. You can use the UDO based information that we already defined to create your own custom dashboards. For example, this dashboard I created like in 10 minutes. Of course, I'm familiar with dashboards. But I have KPIs. I can compare the expenses, like for example, for the toner. I can obtain the budget according and compare with the sale. I can use these cubes and change the different colors according to the results. Maybe if everything goes okay, I can change it to green. If it's really close to the budget, I can show it on yellow. And then if the budget is over it, the expense is over the budget, I can color in red. And of course, I can modify this budget. I can drag, I can filter the information. I can also add these filters for the years that I want, and of course it's going to update the KPIs that I have here. The budgets are basically queries that I add, and in this case this query origins, I have it here in my notepad, is a combination between the budget, I mean the user-defined tables that I created, in combination with the documents that I have. So I added these queries over here. I drag the modules that I want to add to this dashboard, and my dashboard is created. And of course, I can add it to the specific users that I want. I can send automatically these dashboards on a scheduled basis now with the latest features that we included. And something that it's really important that I want to mention is not only the UDO that you can improve, not only the dashboards that you can create. Remember that in the case you need, you can add validations. So for example, if the user is trying to create or maybe a purchase order, because we haven't done the expense yet, if they try to create a document, and I'm gonna consider the unit price I have in my document. Remember that you can create line validations, so this can prevent this document from being created. Imagine that the process is to create a purchase request or the purchase order before you go and purchase this office supplies. Well, if you're adding an amount that is, if this amount you're gonna pass the definition of the budget for this month, maybe you can get a warning. You can create a message and then stop and preventing the creation of the document, or maybe you can modify one user-defined field in the header and run a standard SAP authorization process. So maybe you say, okay, they can try to create a document. We're using B1UP. I'm going to validate line by line and also group by the expense, by the account, but by my user-defined object. And if it meets the condition that it's going to pass or the definition of my budget, then it's going to modify a header field and it's going to run this authorization process. So as you can see, it's a full solution for budget according to the customization that this specific customer needed at the time. And I can create the definitions in a more friendly way. I can create the reports. I can analyze. I can also create dashboards, not only dashboards, but also grid reports, graphic reports. You can send these reports automatically to the supervisors. And you can create this configuration and these line validations using B1 usability package. Okay, I don't know if you have more questions. Most of the questions were about me not sharing my screen. So I don't know if you have questions about these configurations. I think we are okay. Okay. They're asking if you have to set up the validations by yourself. Yes. I mean, all these configurations I created for a customer was a premium service. But you can create these configurations. You have to create the UDO according to your customer needs. You have to create a validations using the B1 validation system. And of course, not all the customers have the same requirements. So the validations you can create based on the definitions of the customer and of course the information. Okay, I think we have no more questions. Thank you so much for your time. I'm sorry for the time lost at the beginning of the session and for me not sharing the screen. I'm glad I can present this to you. Remember that with B1 usability package, you can add flexibility to your standard SAP configuration or definition to with your customers. I hope it helps, and thank you so much for participating.